Today on an all-new Dr. Phil.
It has been 4.5 months since the Chaffee County mom disappeared.
The brother of the missing Colorado mom.
We were fortunate enough to have search dogs.
A Dr. Phil exclusive.
What type of training do these dogs have?
Cadaver.
Breaking news.
They actually hit on something. Do you believe that they have found your sister?
There's a good possibility. I think she was abducted, and in this case, murdered.
And then the body was taken to a second location.
Correct.
Today, in an all-new Dr. Phil exclusive, it's a story that is sweeping the headlines. A family faced with every person's worst nightmare. After an intense search, did a distraught and devastated brother make a huge break in the case of missing mom Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne disappeared on Mother's Day near her home in Colorado, and there's been no sign of her since.
There is an intense search underway right now. It has turned up no sign of a missing mother who disappeared on Mother's Day. Authorities say that Suzanne Morphew left for a bike ride near her home about 150 miles south of Denver, and she never came back.
Family has said her husband Barry was out of town in Denver. A friend called authorities when Morphew didn't return.
It's been a week since Suzanne Morphew vanished. Now, searches have located her bicycle and an unspecified personal item. Her husband, Barry, issued a plea today online.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you.
Today, investigators could be seen searching for evidence at a construction site.
Investigators dug and sifted their way through dirt. The owners of this property were improving their riverfront land. Barry Morphew had been hired to lay the dirt.
This mom of two has been missing since Mother's Day. Now, her husband is revealing he appears to be the target of the investigation.
I love you. I want you back so bad.
Today, Morphew is confirming he has cut off all communication with local police. The sheriff's department screwed this whole thing up from the beginning, he was quoted as saying. Now they are trying to cover it up and blame it on me. Suzanne's brother is pleading for Morphew to cooperate.
His full priority should be to find his wife, and I don't feel like he's fully cooperating at this point.
Suzanne's brother, Andrew Mormon, says he decided to take matters into his own hands, and he organized a search of hundreds of volunteers to comb the area near where Suzanne's bicycle was found, an area surrounding the home she shared with her husband Barry and their daughters. On Sunday, Andrew says he discovered what he believes may be case-breaking evidence, and the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigations have now taken over the scene. You're looking at exclusive photos and video from DailyMail.com.
You're asking why the chasing a lead, got to throw it in the bucket.
Well, today, in a daytime exclusive, he joined us from Colorado immediately following his shocking discovery. Andy, it's Dr. Phil. Awfully glad to meet you, but very sorry for the circumstances.
Yeah, it's been pretty rough. Thank you. It's nice to meet you as well.
Well, we've been following this very, very closely, and my goal this evening is to keep a very bright light on this situation so nobody turns away from it, nobody forgets it, not law enforcement, not anybody in the area. So just know anything you want to talk about, anything that we can do to keep the focus on this, that's exactly what we want to do. And I understand that you have been out in the terrain, in the mountains, in the area, conducting a search on your own, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And I understand that there was some breaking news today that a discovery may have been made. Can you tell us what has happened?
Well, we were fortunate enough to have search dogs in from Missouri and another set from New Mexico yesterday. And we made a little discovery. The dogs hit in a particular area, which we turned over to the FBI now. There's 2 areas of interest, and I've got a 3rd one on the way tomorrow.
So they actually hit on something. So tell me about these dogs.
2 of them were small Australian shepherds, I believe. They were black and white. And when they go in and they see something suspect or smell something suspect, they'll taste the grass and they'll circle the item many times, and then they'll finally set down on it. And the German Shepherds behave almost the same way, only they get extremely excited. Their faces will wrinkle up. Their ears will come forward to catch scent. They'll also kind of scratch on the site. They'll dig.
I hate to ask this, but are these scent and hunting dogs? Are these cadaver dogs? What type of training do these dogs have?
Cadaver dogs.
So these would be dogs that would hit on a scent if they were looking for a dead body, not a live person.
Correct. Guy told me he had one of these German Shepherds hit on a War II vet. So they can smell back a long time.
Do you believe that they have found your sister?
I think there's a good possibility.
And can you describe what the area is? Is this a mine shaft? Is it a grave site? Is it disturbed ground? Is it an air shaft? What kind of area did they hit on?
Well, one of them's a riverfront. Another one is a tree planting. And the third one is an addition being put in, and the entrance area with blocks.
Are these areas that would lend themselves to hiding body or body parts?
Yes, absolutely.
So when those dogs hit, what was the first thing that went through your mind, Andy?
I just said, damn. I can't believe anybody would do this.
Did you think it was something else, or did you think they found her?
I think there's a good chance we should find out in the coming days. And I always knew nothing good was going to come out of this, Phil.
But at that point, you actually said to yourself, I think they found Suzanne.
I think it's a good possibility. We'll certainly see.
Well, as sad as that is, you'd rather know than not know, right?
Right.
When you told law enforcement what you had found, what was their reaction?
They were pleased. They locked the scenes down, and they're going to process it from there.
But what are their next steps at this point? Because I've been watching this every day, and now we are 4.5 months into the mission, and you, through your tenacity and vigilance, have gotten out there and found something. So now, 4.5 months into it, are they going to really gear up now and bring the full force of the FBI and the CBI to play here?
I believe so. We stirred up a hornet's nest out here, Phil. The community got involved. The tip line fired up. Evidence started rolling in. Tips keep rolling into me. I keep sharing them with the FBI. I think they're closing it. I really do.
This is going to shake whoever is involved in this. This is going to shake their tree dramatically. If in fact what you believe to be true is true, that you in fact have found your sister, this is going to shake them to the absolute core. What do you think happened to her and why?
Let me just say this. She's hidden too well, Phil. Her bicycle was planted there. She was never on it. I think she was abducted, and in this case, murdered.
Abducted, taken to a second location, and then ultimately murdered?
Yeah. I don't think she was taken to a second location. I think it happened at home.
So you think she was murdered and then the body was taken to a second location?
Correct.
And you think her husband is the one that did this?
Well, based on behaviors and things that have happened, yeah, I do actually. And I pray it's not.
You certainly hope it's not, and I understand that you can't say that it is, but you've just been suspicious of that for quite some time, correct?
I have, yeah.
Obviously, statistics are not good. I mean, when these kind of things happen, law enforcement always looks at the spouse first, and frankly, it turns out to be the spouse more often than not. So statistics certainly point in that direction. But you've seen some very specific behavior, things that he has done and things that he's not done. But
Correct.
What specifically has pointed you into thinking that it's actually her husband?
Coming up.
I would think that the husband of my sister would be leading the charge with the media, with the search forces, with everybody trying to find out where the wife and mother of the children was.
And later.
One of the things that immediately struck us was this one video where he gave a statement. He started to push all the blame away from himself.
Sheriff's Department, they screwed everything up.
Big red flags.
We now return to a Dr. Phil daytime exclusive.
Search efforts continue today for Suzanne Morphew, the mother who went missing from Chaffee County on Mother's Day. Her brother came to Colorado from Indiana and started a 6-day search effort yesterday. Andrew Mormon says the grim reality is this: he may not find his sister alive, but he says he has confidence someone saw something.
I'd hope to find her alive, and at some point, you have to realize when somebody's missing after so long that the chances of that diminish dramatically.
What specifically has pointed you into thinking that it's actually her husband?
Well, when it started off, Phil, we found the bicycle at the bottom of a ravine, and my brother-in-law is a really good hunter and an expert tracker. And he thought that maybe Suzanne had ridden over the side of that, gotten injured, disorientated, and fallen into the river, and or a bobcat had attacked her. Well, I stood on that bank of that road, and I looked down, and I thought to myself, no, that didn't happen. There's no blood trail. And if I had ridden a bike over there, it would have been pretzelized, and my knuckles would have been hamburgerized. So no blood, no things of that nature. So I told him, I said, Barry, look, she didn't get taken by a puma. There's no mountain lion involved here. He acted like he didn't want to hear that. But he finally came to the realization that everybody else realized that didn't happen. So the next thing, he's hauled in and questioned and interrogated by the CBI. Won't take a lie detector or voice analysis. And that bothered me deeply. Thirdly, the EVI information, which is called electronic vehicle information, on his truck did not line up with his timeline of events that he laid out for the police. Fourthly, since then, some of his employees have come forward speaking of the smell of chlorine at a hotel room that he hastily got for them to set up on a wall project where they were building a wall.
When was the last time that you had a face-to-face conversation with him?
May 11th.
Is he at all aware of what you have found, other than the conversation we're having now, which of course he's not listening to, but does he have any idea that progress may have been made in finding something?
I don't believe he does, no.
Assuming this is Barry, what would you expect next?
Well, I think that an arrest would be made. Obviously, he'd be prosecuted for the crime.
And of course, he has absolutely denied this. He said he's not doing it. I want to be very clear about that. We can't say that he did it. I'm not saying that he did it because he's not here to deny it. And if he was, he certainly would. You may or may not know that I'm trained in forensic psychology, and I've learned to go back and find out that there's a link in every chain. And this took place on Mother's Day weekend, and that he left on Sunday to go to Denver to work on a job. Would you expect that to be part of that relationship, or him to take off and her to go riding a bicycle on Mother's Day?
No, it doesn't sound anywhere near normal to me. And like I said, the EVI information on his truck didn't line up, Phil. He said he saw her at 5 a.m., and he did not.
And how do you know that?
Testimony from an employee that he was rambling down the road, texting people at 4 in the morning, trying to get them to go to Broomfield.
So
can't be at home at 5.
And talking to somebody on the road at 4.
Right.
That is, so that the timeline doesn't add up at all.
No, not at all.
You've got two nieces, Mallory, who's now 22, and Macy, who's 16. Would she go off riding by herself, or would she be in contact with them? Would she go off the radar for 7 days and have no social media presence, no presence electronically for that period of time with her daughters?
No, absolutely not. They were on a camping trip with the church, and
right.
On their way home, wanted to wish their mother a happy Mother's Day. Got no answer. They called their father, said, Dad, we can't get a hold of Mom. He tried. He says he tried, couldn't get a hold of her. And he asked the neighbor to go over and see if she was home. So the neighbor goes over, opens the garage. The cars are all home. She returns to her phone, calls Barry. Cars are home. Barry says, what about our bicycle? The lady says, I'll have to go back over. So she runs back over, looks, no bicycle. The odd thing to me was at midnight on Saturday night, I want you to realize she was seen in town with Barry getting a sandwich at 4 p.m. At midnight, somebody friended all of the guys my age on her Facebook. At midnight.
At midnight?
Yeah. My theory is she was killed after 4. Her Facebook was manipulated at midnight. She was hidden between midnight and 4 a.m. on Mother's Day morning.
Coming up.
Puckett says something was off, a distinct smell.
Chlorine. I mean, it smelled real strong, and I'm like, damn.
He just showed up in a chlorine-smelling room, and next thing he knows, Barry's called back home. It just seems like there's just an awfully lot of odd things going on.
We now return to a Dr. Phil daytime exclusive.
Listen, Jeff Puckett was in prison for 9 years.
Still, Barry had hired Puckett for a project in Broomfield, fixing a wall on what turned out to be the weekend his wife, Suzanne, was reported missing.
I said, listen, I need to do this job. I will pay you good money to come and help me.
And Barry paid for Puckett's room, but didn't stay. Puckett says it looked like Barry had spent time inside at some point as well. But he said something was off, a distinct smell.
Describe what the room smelled like.
Chlorine. I mean, it smelled real strong, and I'm like, damn. That's just all I thought.
Puckett says he turned what he found over to authorities.
I mean, it's either foul play or an alien got it. I mean, we know aliens, that's kind of far-fetched.
Barry told Fox 21 News he's not worried about anything left behind in that room.
I didn't do nothing wrong in the hotel. There's cameras all over that place. I did nothing wrong.
Noting even he had noticed the smell of chlorine but shrugged it off.
If people think that you did it, what would you tell them?
Absolutely not. I love my wife. I would never hurt my wife. She is the light of my and my daughter's lives.
Have you spoken with Jeff Puckett?
No.
Well, Jeff Puckett is the worker, obviously, as you know, that was hired by Barry to work on the job and was told that there was urgency there, but yet he says when he shows up, he never saw any tools, he never saw any job preparation, that it looked to him like he never intended for a job to be done.
Right. That's exactly what I heard.
That he just showed up in a chlorine-smelling room, and next thing he knows, Barry's called back home. So it just seems like there's just an awful lot of odd things going on. And I just don't know how you square all of those things up. And now, I can't say that Barry's the one involved in this, but it sure doesn't look good.
Well, Phil, let me ask you. You've dealt with a lot of these situations. And all these behaviors that I've explained to you, if you were sitting in my shoes, what would you think?
Well, I would think that the husband of my sister would be leading the charge with the media, with the search forces, with everybody trying to find out where the wife and mother of the children was, and would be doing everything possible to bring that to the forefront and answering any and all questions, taking lie detector tests, voice print tests, anything he could do to eliminate himself as a suspect so all resources could be focused on the real culprits if it wasn't him.
Right. And that's what I love about you, Phil. No nonsense. You're straight up. You tell it how it is. And that's what people need to hear.
I've worked on so many of these things, and I've worked with FBI polygraph operators, and they say the first thing people do is eliminate themselves because they don't want law enforcement wasting resources looking at them if they're not the ones to do it. They say, look, take me first, ask me first, clear me first, so you can spend all of your time doing that. And of course, he hasn't been charged, he hasn't been named as a person of interest, he hasn't been arrested or indicted or anything of the sort, but we can also state the facts, they are what they are, and let people make up their own mind. And I don't understand his behavior at all. I don't understand it at all. I don't understand why and why he's not sitting next to you right now while we're having this conversation, which goes out to millions and millions of people. It certainly doesn't look good.
I agree. I agree 100%.
He has stated that he believes investigators have botched the case and are blaming him to cover that up. And we have heard the one statement that he did make, or the one video statement that he did make. And let's just take a look at what he said.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you. No questions asked. However much they want, I will do whatever it takes to get you back. Honey, I love you. I want you back so bad.
What's your reaction to that?
Coming up.
Barry and your sister were married for 26 years. During that time, would you have seen something like this coming? Was there ever a time that you were concerned for her safety?
We now return to a Dr. Phil daytime exclusive.
Oh, Suzanne, if anyone is out there that can hear this, that has you, please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back. We love you, we miss you, your girls need you.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, if that were true, he'd be sitting here talking to you and not me.
Yeah.
That's my reaction to that. What's your reaction to that, Phil?
You know, your body doesn't lie. The whole time he's saying, yeah, I really want you back, he's shaking his head no. We want you back. We'll do anything in the world. He's shaking his head no the whole time he's saying it. I don't know. There's other explanations for that. That could just be heartbroken and disgust. It could also be his body speaking out without him being aware of it. Our producer did get him on the phone, and he said he was just not ready to talk yet, and that he did want his wife to come home. He's made statements. He said that the co-workers who stated they smelled chlorine so strongly in his room that their eyes burned, he said they're not to be believed because one of them's an ex-convict and a meth head. And he's also said that these rooms are clean because of COVID. You know, he kind of has an explanation for some of these things. And why is he not out there climbing the hill with you? Why is he not out there with these dogs? Why is he not out there looking? I'm troubled by that. I am. I would be lying if I said I wasn't. Barry and your sister were married for 26 years. During that time, would you have seen something like this coming? Was there ever a time that you were concerned for her safety?
Not really. Suzanne was pretty mild-mannered, and I think Barry always ran the show. And there's nothing odd about that in this situation.
But there was never a time that you thought, boy, I'm really concerned about her. I need to watch that situation closely?
No, I worried about her a little bit being all the way out here in Colorado, and the fact that I thought she was getting lonely. That was it.
Is there anything that you want people to know that might trigger some kind of remembrance that would help?
Well, what I would tell you is all these little tidbits add up. Chris and Mike on Profiling Evil, these two guys have helped me more than anyone. They have collected information and given it to me that I've given to the FBI, and it's helped tremendously.
I know you've organized the search, and I know you've wanted to announce if anyone is available for the search, because until you know, until the answer is 100% certain, this is an active search.
Exactly. I would prefer that people would sign up for the search than give money. This is not a money thing.
You need boots on the ground. You need people out there scouring, looking for a little fragment of clothing, a little piece of anything that could lead to a direction. If you've got time, volunteer. We need help. This has to be solved. And we're not here to make false accusations. We're here to get answers. Andy, I know you've been at this all day. You've got these PIs on board. It's an honor to talk to you. It's an honor to be a help here.
Well, I greatly appreciate you having me on, Phil, and I respect your show.
Well, I appreciate that, and your sister deserves all the effort you're putting forth. She's lucky to have you as a brother, and we're going to stay after this till we get some answers, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Coming up.
There were multiple theories. One was a mountain lion, and I'm a bit of a country boy, and I've found predators don't usually clean up after themselves.
And the experts said that in 125 years in North America, there's been fewer than 100 people that have ever been killed by a mountain lion.
We now return to a Dr. Phil daytime exclusive.
It's been 4 months since a Colorado mom went missing during a bike ride on Mother's Day. The woman's brother has been very critical of her husband, even though he has not been named a suspect. And now the brother is leading an army of searchers through the mountains looking for clues.
Andrew recruited the help of 2 veteran law enforcement experts who now own their own company called Profiling Evil. Mike King and Chris McDonough spearheaded the private investigation and hope they may have helped him break the case so that he can bring his sister home. I'm talking to Mike King and Chris McDonough. And Chris, you've worked in the homicide unit for many years. Mike is a former investigator and police officer. What struck you about Suzanne's case when you first heard about it?
This thing from the beginning just really seemed strange to us. We looked at the victimology. We started to evaluate the different kinds of people that potentially would be involved in someone that's a low-risk victim like this.
This wasn't someone that put themselves in harm's way. She certainly was not in a high-crime occupation. When she went completely silent, that's a big red flag right immediately, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And we were so troubled by that, Dr. Phil. I mean, we looked at this and we thought, who could be these possible suspects responsible for something like this? And with a low-risk victim, you always go back to those in the inner circle. And sadly, it usually means that that person's a target of that assault. And we're not interested in pointing any fingers. We're just interested in asking all the whys.
One of the things that immediately struck us and struck me, obviously, with as a former investigator, was this one video where he gave a statement to a YouTuber. And so as we started to analyze that a little bit closer, one of the things that struck us almost immediately was he was talking in plural, we, us, them, they.
So we thought maybe she got attacked by a lion. We thought maybe she wrecked coming down this hill, a car coming around the corner fast, or maybe was disoriented and got in the river. We've covered all of this really good.
And then he started to push all the blame away from himself. He was, blaming other people.
Sheriff's Department, they screwed everything up. They shouldn't have touched it. All left.
Yeah, big red flags immediately.
There were multiple theories or stories that were being bandied about. One was a mountain lion, and I'm a bit of a country boy, and I've found predators don't usually clean up after themselves. There's usually a pretty big mess left behind, and there was no such scene anywhere to be found, right?
No, in fact, that was really troubling to us too, Dr. Phil. There were no artifacts to support a bicycle collision or some predatory means, either a human or an animal, tearing this woman from her bicycle. No physical evidence that we've been able to hear about as far as torn clothing in the trees. And we were so troubled by this idea of a mountain lion, so we reached out to the Mountain Lion Foundation, and the experts said that in 125 years in North America, there's been fewer than 100 people that have ever been killed by a mountain lion.
I've seen scenes of predators' attacks on animals because it's so seldom a human, and it looks like you walked into an airplane propeller. And I know that's gruesome. I'm just saying it to rule that sort of thing out. Taken by a random person. And then the third theory, of course, which is statistically the most likely, is being victimized by someone she knew, which I assume is probably the most likely scenario that you guys entertain. Would that be correct?
We couldn't get her out of the circle in relationship to that victimology that kept pointing back to the house first. One of the most disturbing things I think that we uncovered pretty early was this conversation that her husband had had with Andy's father, Gene. And, this is an 87-year-old man who's, suffering from cancer, and he gets a phone call from his son-in-law, and he's basically said, what was told to me was that, I loved your daughter, and I need you to sign some papers. And basically it was the guardianship. And Gene, essentially said, what do you mean you love my daughter? Where is she? We're going to find her. And no, I'm not signing any paperwork. And I think that was a real game changer in terms of, some very interesting behavior. And then we started connecting other dots from there.
Certainly there's suspicion about Barry. And again, none of us can say that he's involved in this. He's not been named as a person of interest. He's not a suspect. He's not been arrested, indicted, or charged. We need to be very clear about that. What are some of the things on your list that keep you watching him very closely?
Coming up.
Mike, if you would, start with commenting on this picture of, and I believe it's Barry lying on the ground. Can you describe what we're seeing in this picture here?
We now return to a Dr. Phil daytime exclusive.
No one believes that Suzanne Morphew pulled a gone girl. She did not do this on her own. No eyewitnesses that we know of now ever saw Suzanne Morphew on a bike. My question is, was she ever really even on that bike? Husband, ex-husband, boyfriend, ex, those are the very first people that law enforcement looks at, because statistically, they are overwhelmingly responsible when a woman ends up dead or missing. That in no way means Barry Morphew is guilty, but it does mean they will look at him first.
What are some of the things on your list that keep you watching Barry very closely?
One of the first things that we all know as experienced investigators is, where's the family? That was one of the very biggest flags that we saw initially. We would have expected to see a lot more coming from the house and not necessarily from the brother. The second is, we started learning certain individuals were placed inside of the search teams to watch the searchers. That certainly is a disturbing type of behavior.
And Mike, if you would, start with commenting on this picture of, and I believe it's Barry lying on the ground, and making some comments about this would be a good place if you were going to dump her body. Can you describe what we're seeing in this picture here?
Well, that was really interesting to us. And of course, everything that we got was through an anonymous person who relayed the photograph to us that indicated that they were with Barry. But the thing that was so intriguing was this was apparently 3 days after Suzanne disappeared, and they had been traveling around looking for her. They ended up at the top of a mountain, and he said, and I'm putting this into my words, Dr. Phil, let's look over this ridge here, because this would be a good place for someone to throw someone off the cliff. And this person thought that was so incredibly odd. And then, according to the story we were given, then Barry laid down on the ground and started heaving, either crying or heaving from exhaustion. By all intents and purposes, he could have been completely worn out emotionally and physically, and not been thinking clearly. But we held on to the picture. We made sure that made its way to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. We don't know the significance of that, but one of the things that we've tried to do is just look at the behavior, and we look back on a couple of things. We looked on that first statement where he asked for help, and even there he's saying, if they will bring you back, or something to that extent. That kind of troubled us too, because statistically when there's an abduction, it's usually a single individual. Now, of course, there are possible scenarios where it could be more, but there, and then later when we talked to this YouTuber, we counted 19 times that he said they and us, and everything was pluralized. Then we just started watching the behavior since then, and likened it to when Elizabeth Smart was abducted. And Ed Smart, who was the focus of a lot of criticism and a lot of focus from a perspective of a potential suspect, he was still in the press every single day saying, help me find my daughter. And we haven't heard a word, a peep, a boo. And then we heard through the grapevine he's now sold the house and he's got guardianship and he's giving all these things, which I think would be normal if you lost a companion. I don't know if it would be normal within a couple of months, but all of a sudden these affairs are getting straightened out so that he has control of those dollars. And then he's buying a new truck and a new motorcycle and her brother's organizing a search and he's not saying, where do you want me? And all of those kinds of things just really troubled us from a behavioral standpoint.
Well, that's the thing, and you point out people react differently, but it just seems odd to me based on what I've experienced. But on behalf of the two of you and myself, again, I want to say, we're not saying that he's done anything to his wife. We don't know. We're just saying, here's what we see, and this is compared to the norm of what we see in these situations, and it certainly is not consistent with what we typically see, and it is a departure from that. Does that mean that he's guilty of wrongdoing here? We can't say that, but all we can do is call him as we see him and report the behavior we're observing, and if that contributes to solving the crime, then great. And if it puts him in a bad light, then he has the opportunity to answer, and he was invited to do so, but he certainly doesn't want to talk to us at this point, which is his right. So I certainly understand that. What are your thoughts on what was discovered today? What are your thoughts on what was discovered today?
When the cadaver dogs got a hit, obviously it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, as you know more than anybody. We were just ecstatic that, this could possibly be something. If it's certainly not Suzanne, maybe it's somebody else that we're going to bring peace to a family too. So we're just honored to be part of it.
I certainly hope that it proves to be something of substance, and if not, again, it's a process of elimination. What is the proximity of these locations to Suzanne's home?
We're kind of trying to keep it under the QT. We certainly don't want to jeopardize any potential other evidentiary finds.
In fact, thank you for protecting that. Is it safe to say that these locations are not out of the orbit for where she might have wound up if she had fallen victim to foul play?
Yeah, I mean, she's within a definitely 100% range of what you're referring to.
This was in a radius where you might expect something to take place. Well, guys, I can't tell you how inspired I am by what you guys are doing, and your YouTube channel, Profiling Evil, and the podcast and all. I think people are going to be so intrigued by what you guys are doing. Gentlemen, you've made a tremendous contribution to this case, and Andy is very grateful to you, as I am, for you coming on and spending time talking to me, and I hope we'll be able to do this again.
Thank you for keeping the spotlight on Suzanne. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you. Let me be very clear about something. Barry Morphew has not been named by law enforcement as either a person of interest or a suspect in his wife's disappearance. He vehemently denies that he has any knowledge about what may have happened to her or any role in her disappearance, and says he is praying for her safe return. However, in any missing persons case, investigators must always consider the possible role of those in the person's inner circle. We reached out to Barry and invited him to sit down with me to discuss his wife's disappearance. Although he was not interested, the invitation is open, and we hope to hear from him. I want to really thank Mike King and Chris McDonough for their amazing work. Check out their YouTube channel, Profiling Evil. I want to thank DailyMail.com for the use of their exclusive photos. I also want to thank Andrew for being able to sit down for that interview after what was an incredibly tough day of seeing dogs hit, not just on one spot, but then the second and then the third. After our groundbreaking interview with Andrew, the following took place.
The private search for Suzanne Morphew comes to an end. The Chaffee County Sheriff's Office and the FBI focused in on 3 areas. Today, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office even excavated at one of 3 properties where dogs trained to detect human remains indicated interest or alerted. The sheriff says they found no evidence, but they will continue to follow up.
We are praying for him and his family that Suzanne is brought home and that if the worst has happened, they receive some justice and some peace. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts of Suzanne Morphew, call the FBI tip line at 719-312-7530. For more information, go to drphil.com. Thanks for watching this important story.